I'd like to speak about Matan Torah. The title of the shiur is The Power and Awe of Matan Torah. The Ramban in Parshas Ve'eschanon interprets certain psukim that evolved into being one of the loy sases Shabbat Torah, it's a negative mitzvah in the Torah, that was enunciated, formulated by Moshe Rabbeinu at the end of 40 years. And Moshe Rabbeinu warns the Jewish people, Rak yishamar lecha shmol nafshecha me'oid, pen tishkach es hadvarim asher ro'einecha, upen yosuru melevavcha kol yemei chayecha, v'yidatam levonecha levnevonecha. So Moshe Rabbeinu did not exactly say what's the object of this negative prohibition. He just warned the Jewish people, beware and watch yourself very well. You have to be very, very careful lest you forget the things that your eyes saw, and lest these things depart from your heart. They have to stay in your heart all the days of your life. And this experience, you shall make them known to your children and to your children's children. What exactly is the object of this prohibition? Not to forget and not to remove them from the experiential part of your existence, which usually revolves around the heart. Yom asher amadta lifnei Hashem Elokecha becherev, be'emor Hashem elai hakel li es ha'om v'ashmiim es dvorai asher yilmedu liyiroichi kol hayomim. I'm sorry for the arichos, but it's important for us to mention the entire pasuk. What is the object of this negative prohibition? You can never forget, and you have to pass on to your children, the experience of the day you stood before HaKadosh Baruch Hu at Har Sinai, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to me, assemble the people for me, and I'll let them hear the words of the Torah. And that Maamad Har Sinai was a psychodramatic act, like it says in the second pasuk, what was Maamad Har Sinai? Just not an intellectual experience, HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Moshe Rabbeinu transmitting the Torah to the Jewish people, but it was an overwhelming emotional, metaphysical experience as well. When you approached and stood at the foot of the mountain, Har Sinai, burned with fire up to the midst of the heaven. There was a fire, a gigantic fire that actually reached the heavens. And there was darkness and a cloud and an opaque darkness as well, all different types of darkness. And this was a psychodramatic act which encompassed the transmission of the Torah. So it was not only to be understood intellectually, but it was supposed to be something which actually penetrated deep, deep into a person's inner being. The Ramban in Sefer HaMitzvahs states that these verses describing the remembrance of Maamad Har Sinai, better known as the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the Jewish people at Sinai, constitutes a negative commandment. This is number 2 in the Sefer HaMitzvahs listing of the mitzvahs that the Rambam did not list. In other words, at the end of Sefer HaMitzvahs, we have the enumeration of the 613 mitzvahs. So the Rambam criticizes the Rambam for omitting very important mitzvahs. So he says very clearly in his Torah commentary, as well as in Sefer HaMitzvahs of the Ramban, in contrast to the Rambam, that this verse explains the importance of being extremely careful to remember not only the source of the mitzvahs, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's revelation, Har Sinai, Ein v'ayin nireu, it was something which was sensed with the eyes. It was sensed with the five basic senses. Additionally, says the Ramban, we are charged, mandated to recall the experience of Maamad Har Sinai, the thunder and lightning and darkness and fire, which basically was something which the Jewish people experienced in terms of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Godloi, his greatness, as well as Kvaidai, his glory and majesty. So these words that were transmitted must be transmitted to future generations, but not only the Torah, the content of Maamad Har Sinai, but also more so, perhaps even more important than the cognitive plane, says the Ramban, which the cognitive plane, of course, expresses the understanding and recalling of the Seres HaDibros and the other mitzvahs, but it's supposed to be also a transmission to future generations of the experiential and extensional plane as well. In other words, Maamad Har Sinai has to penetrate into the innermost self of the person. He has to always re-experience existentially the awe and the power of Maamad Har Sinai, and it has to be felt in the depths of his personality. And the Ramban explains why is there such a mitzvah saloi saseh. How important is us to know this? So the Ramban tells us that if it would not be for the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu transmitted the first of the two Aseres HaDibros to the Jewish people, and Moshe Rabbeinu transmitted the others within this psychodramatic surroundings, so it will be possible for a novi, a prophet, a false prophet, to introduce, difficult to say, but he could introduce the new Torah, negate certain commandments of the Torah, and instead of these commandments can say that these are new commandments, as we see certain movements in the course of the years indeed change the Torah, even though we know we have a Ani Maamad, we believe Emunah Shlema that there's no chas v'sholom, anything which can be changed. It's immutable eternally, the Torah HaKadoshah. Nevertheless, it's a possibility, and we saw it implemented in our generations to change the formulation of the commandments, positive and negative, of the Torah. However, says the Ramban, those that were there, as Moshe Rabbeinu was addressing the 40th year, those people that witnessed Har Sinai and the transmission of the Torah with the thunder and lightning, with the overwhelming emotional experience. So it was ayin be'ayin Maamad Har Sinai. The Jewish people sensed with this overwhelming experience the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the commander-in-chief and everything emanated from him, and there can be no change whatsoever, but this will be transmitted from generation to generation, to children, grandchildren, and to all generations. Why, says the Ramban? Because no father is interested to transmit any type of legacy which is detrimental to the welfare of the children. This is important to the welfare of the children. This is not only important, it is indispensable for the welfare of the children. You must know that it was source of all the Torahs HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and there was an experience which surrounded it and encompassed Matan Torah. Jewish people formed a very strong relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the question naturally arises, and the one that asked the question was the great Rabbi Kotler, Zecher Tzadik V'Kodesh Livracha, Moron Rosh HaYeshiva. He says that we have many mitzvahs, and when he speaks about mitzvahs, the Rosh HaYeshiva Zecher Tzadik V'Kodesh Livracha means mitzvahs maisius, acts of mitzvahs, that these mitzvahs, through their actions and the positive activity of being engaged in this mitzvah, will serve as a recollection of what the mitzvah comes to commemorate. So the great Rabbi Kotler says that we have a mitzvah of Yitzias, Zecher Yitzias Mitzrayim. We have to remember Yitzias Mitzrayim. And we have to transmit it to our children as if we saw Yitzias Mitzrayim and we still see Yitzias Mitzrayim. Atem ri'isem es kol asher osa Hashem leinechem beretz Mitzrayim leparoi ulechol avodov. And Rabbi Kotler writes that that's mechayiv us be'oifen masi, mitzvahs aseh, actions, to commemorate b'chol dar v'dar, every generation, every week, every day, Yitzias Mitzrayim, until it's actually very clear to us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim with great nisim and nifloyas. So in addition to Pesach, with all the mitzvahs, says Rabbi Kotler, Isur Chametz, 1, Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, 2, Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim Leil HaPesach. You have Zechiras Yitzias Mitzrayim every day. We say it 2 times a day in Kriya Shema. We have Pidyon Bechar Odom, Pidyon Bechar. So that's also a commemoration of a remembrance of Yitzias Mitzrayim. And we also have it in Tefillin. Tefillin also, we have the Parshias of Tefillin Shel Yad, Tefillin Shel Rosh, that commemorate the great event of Yitzias Mitzrayim. Because Yitzias Mitzrayim, said Rabbi Kotler, Al Pi the Ramban and Parshas Boy, was a clear manifestation, revelation, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hashgacha, klolis and protis, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu controls everything. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is supernatural, has all the koiches, all the powers to do whatever he wants to do, as well as it proved the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu. So since this is so important, and the course of the time, due to the failure of individuals, as part of their shortcomings, part of their nature, it's a concession, as it were, to human frailties who tend to forget, and important things in the course of the time weaken. So therefore, every single day, we have Zechir Yitzias Mitzrayim with a mitzvahs maisius, verbally. And on certain days of the year, we have mitzvahs maisius, activities, acts. We eat matzah, maror. We have pidyon abed, bechar odom, pidyon of a behema, of a bechar behema. All of these actions, odom nifal lefi pulaisav, a person is nifal according to his pu'ulais. He does the actions which commemorate Yitzias Mitzrayim. So this will be firmly absorbed in his pnimius hanefesh, and he'll never forget Almighty God with the manifestations of his greatness and glory. Ask the Baron Kotler, a bombe kasha. Maamad Sinai is no less important than Yitzias Mitzrayim, because as the Ramban says, this is the only proof that Torah is ben Hashamayim. And if Torah is ben Hashamayim, and this was transmitted from generation to generation, from Avos Lebanim, throughout the millennia, So no one will ever be able to contradict it or reject it. They could try, but it won't succeed. They're doomed to failure. So why are there no mitzvahs maisiyos which commemorate Maamad Har Sinai? We would expect that the Rosh Hashiva Zeichet Tzaddik V'Kadosh Livracha that on Shvuyos we would have maisim, actions, activities that we are commanded in order never to forget, never to diminish the intensity of our feeling of the penetrating effect of Maamad Har Sinai that it has on every individual. And we have no mitzvahs maisis even on Shvuyos, on Sukkot. We sit in the Sukkot, Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim, because when they left Egypt, they had nowhere to stay, so they built Sukkot. This is also an aspect of Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim through mitzvahs maisias, through commandments that express themselves in actions. So we would expect, if it says, Raki Shomel L'cho, Ushmol Nafshecha Me'oi Pen Tishkach Advogam Asher Ro Einecha, Upen Yosuru B'Levovcha Kol Yemei Chayecha, Yom Asher Omadeto, L'fnei Hashem Elokecha B'Har Sinai, V'Hachoyrev. And the emphasis and stress is on the experiential aspect, because it was ayin ba'ayin yireu, not so much the cognitive strain, but the experiential strain. Unbelievable question. And the question was asked in different forms, but that's the basic question. Shavuos is without a basic mitzvah. So the great Rosh Yeshiva, if we understand them correctly, the way it was given over by Shner Kotler, Hagoyin Hagodol, Moiri V'Rabbi, Shner Kotler, Zeichel Tzaddik V'Kadosh Livracha, Hagoyin in Torah, Hagoyin in Midas, unbelievable. So the answer basically is that when do you make an act to remember, right? Only if it's a historical event of the past. All the oises, all the moifsim, and all the nisim of Gulas Mitzrayim that surrounded and encompassed the Exodus are events of the past. And that's why we say, the mantisco, as you say, you have to remember that day. And there's actions. That through the actions, it penetrates deeper and deeper into the very core and substance of being of a Jew. So you make remembrances. But Maamad Har Sinai does not need a zeichel. It does not need an act that we should remember it, even though we cannot forget it, and it has to be part of our I exist awareness. We're aware of it dormantly, actively, every minute of our lives. Anytime we do a mitzvah, we know this is because there was a mountain Torah Bahar Sinai. So this is something which is still extant. There's no Ma'aseh mitzvah necessary, because Maamad Har Sinai is a continual process. The expression of Maamad Har Sinai appears regularly, even today, if we would be on the proper madrega. So therefore, if we take a look at Chazal, correct? So what's the answer? The answer is Maamad Har Sinai does not require a Maisa, an act to remember, to recall it, to commemorate it, because Maamad Har Sinai is continuous. It's happening today too, if it would be on the proper level. So we'll just bring down without trying to be boring or to elongate anything, to spread it out, but we just bring a few examples. So we have one example here that I believe is an exceptional example that proves this point. Rav Karla did not bring down examples. Rav Karla just did say parenthetically that when he came to America, he saw that you don't need a proof that there has been Hashemayim. Because in the 1930s, he saw yeshiva bachrim learning in such an atmosphere of real materialism and total lack of spiritualism. So he said that the boys are learning in America today can only be because there has been Hashemayim. This is a feeling of the great Rosh Yeshiva. But for all generations, correct, we see that Maamad Sinai is continual. So we have a Gemara in Chagiga, a very fascinating Gemara, in my humble opinion. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai roichav al chamor. And immediately he saw Rabbi Elazar ben Aroich was speaking to his Talmidim in Ma'aseh Merkavah. And all of a sudden, what did he see? V'yarda eish min hashamayim, a fire descended from heaven, and all the surrounding trees and forests became ablaze. And the Medrash Shir Hashirim told us that this doesn't apply only when we have Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch speaking about mysticism. We have another case of Amoraim, the Baba Barakumi, the Chaverov. So B'shasha you chorzim, b'divrei Torah. Chorzim means like you have a pearl necklace, you have one pearl connected to the other. So they were connecting pearls of Torah one with the other, which was Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. So ha'esh mislaheta svivayseyam. A fire descended. There was lightning and fire. The hoyu hadvagim. And Chazal told us, Beruach HaKedesh, v'hayu advarim smeichim. They were so happy. It was such a happy occasion. Kinisinosa misinai. This is the words of the Gemara, as if right now we are reenacting Maamad Har Sinai. And now the Gemara brings a rhetorical question. Was not the Torah that was given over b'Sinai given over with fire and lightning and thunder, etc.? It says Mount Sinai was ablaze till the heart of heaven, millions of light years away. So this is Maamad Har Sinai, just like the Rosh Yeshiva Zecher Tzaddik says. What do you have to make a Zeichel? And this was the learning Tanakh, Torah Nevi'im Uksuvim. And we have a proof of that because when Ben Azai was sitting and darshaning, so there was a Eish Milahetes Misvivayis, there was a tremendous fire that surrounded him. So Rabbi Kiva approached him and he said, I see that you're darshaning at Eish Mislahetes Vivoscha. Maybe you're speaking about Ma'aseh Merkavah. He said, no. I was not Isaac in Ma'aseh Merkavah, mysticism. Ella, Chayreis B'divrei Torah. I spoke about the Parshas HaShavua. And then I connected that with another pearl of Nevi'im Uksuvim. V'hoyu hadvarim smeichim. And it was such a happy occasion. V'yu arevim ki ikar nisinosam. It was as sweet and pleasant like the essential transmission of the Torah millennia ago at Har Sinai. And then The Gemara tells us, we have countless Gemaras like this, brings down the rhetorical question, wasn't it given over with a fire? So therefore you do not need a zeicha. If we learn Torah properly, we would also have right now a reenactment, a genuine reenactment of Har Sinai, Maamad Har Sinai, the psychodramatic event of Har Sinai. And it's interesting, it's almost fascinating that when we think about it, right, we delve into it a little bit, so we see something quite fascinating, that the Jewish people had the greatest day of happiness that it's imaginable. In other words, when the Gemara tells us, it's literal. It's not figuratively. The Torah means it literally. What is the pshat? The Medrash Shiur HaShirim describes Matan Torah. The happiest occasion possible. How is that? So the Medrash tells us on the pasuk, "Tapuach be'atzei ayav, kein doidi bein abonim, b'tziloi shimariti v'yoshafti, u'pilyoi mosoik lechiki." So the pasuk tells us, this is the translation of the pasuk, as an apple tree among the trees of the wood, kein doidi bein abonim, likewise my lover among all lovers, b'tziloi chimadeti v'yoshafti, u'pilyoi mosoik lechiki, in his shade I derived tremendous pleasure sitting there, and his words were like peiros that were sweet as possible to my palate. Those are the words, correct. So the Chazal say, "Ma tapuach hazeh ein bo yitzel." The fichal kulam bercha mimeni b'yom sharov. Apple tree is shunned by all people when the sun beats down because it provides no shade. The leaves are very small. Likewise, all the umois ha'olam rejected HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is a reference to Matan Torah. They ran away. HaKadosh Baruch Hu presented the Torah to them. They rejected the Torah. Only the Jewish people accepted the Torah. Good. Yochol Af Yisrael. Okay, so the Chazal continue Medrash Shiur HaShirim on this verse. Maybe the Jewish people acted like the Goyim. Talmud Loima, so we learn no. But Siloi. Yoshafti v'chimadeti, Pirya Mosek lechiki. No, we have a pasuk, Yochol Af Yisrael, okay, so we say no. What's the raya? B'tziloi, Yoshafti v'chimadeti, Pirya Mosek lechiki. So the going in this Perush says that this, what the Chazal say, is the Poship Pshat in the pasuk. This is the going al derech hapshat. So there's Matnas Kahuna, one of the classic Mefarshim of the Torah, said that that's for sure difficult to understand. Very, very difficult to understand because we don't need a proof that the Jewish people accepted the Torah. We know why is it called Sinai. So Chazal told us because as soon as the Jewish people accepted the Torah, so anti-Semitism and hatred descended into the world. The Jewish people accepted the Torah. They must be outstanding people. We could not do it. So therefore we have a reverse reaction. Because they're such great people, so we're going to hate them because we cannot tolerate that there are people greater than us. This is what Chazal say. This is the root of anti-Semitism and hatred. It's a reflection of the fact that a person has a horrible arrogance, and he can't stand that there's a nation and individuals that are superior to him. So what does he do? He does the reverse. Starts to belittle them, to demean them, to make a lilas dam, to say lies about them, that they're subhuman when they're superhuman. This is the way the psychology of anti-Semitism works, and there should be no mistake about it. Even Jean-Paul Sartre said that it's totally irrational, because even the Christians that don't believe that Yoshka Pandra ever lived, but they believe that the Jews killed him. So this is the Yesod HaYesodus, and we don't need a pasuk in Shir HaShirim to prove that the Jewish people accepted the Torah. So we don't understand the Medrash at all. What does it mean, Yochalaf Yisrael Kain? Maybe the Jewish people as well acted like the Goyim. Number two, how can we say there is no shade? Matapuach Hazed, this apple doesn't have shade. It says in the pasuk, I was delighted myself by sitting in the shade. These are the questions of the answer apparently should be that if we ask ourselves the question, why did the other nations reject the Torah? So the Chazal tell us, they ask, what's written in the Torah? So Esav, Edom said, you're telling us that Lo Sirtzach is mentioned in the Torah? We can't live without Lo Sirtzach. We can't abide by such a negative command. We can't abide by such restriction because we were, so to speak, formed like the great, like Yitzchak Avinu said, Al Char B'Chotichya. What is our life what is our life all about? Char B'Chot, Cherev, power, destruction, killing. We are, insofar as our natural tendencies are concerned, violent people who have to kill. And B'Beinu Shalom, why did you create humanity at all? Why did you create the world? So we know the answer. The Baal Tanya already speaks about it at great length. Lehetiv imabrius, to do good to the Jewish, to do good to people. To do good to people. So this is our nature. We want a good life, and in order to have a good life, we'd have to express what our natural tendencies, which is control over other people, power over other people, and if necessary, we do it through violence. So we should reject our own nature and go into deep depression. And what about Bnei Yishmael? Bnei Yishmael said to have a good life, our natural tendencies is to have money. And if we can't have money, materialistic goods of the senses, we shall steal. So we can't accept the Torah because it says, what do you want? We should go into deep depression. So all the Gentile nations that rejected the Torah because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to be happy. He wants you to express your nature. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu formed the nature of Bnei Esav, Bnei Yishmael, to have a nature that is opposed by the Torah restrictions, opposed to good life. It's an inner contradiction. It can't be that we should accept the Torah. That's the way they understood. A good life revolves around Genevis, Ritzichas, violence. So when the Chazal asks, Yochalaf Yisrael came, not that the Jewish people didn't accept the Torah, that we know. We don't even have to know Torah to know that. If you're Jewish, you already know that you're the chosen people. Even if you don't know anything about Torah, you feel it from the anti-Semitism and the hatred that's directed against us, especially in the historical period that we're living in. They meant that maybe the Jewish people had the same approach, that the Torah and a good life are mutually exclusive, two poles. opposite, one the other. On that, they accepted the Torah because, after all, they are descendants of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and they were able to overwhelm their natural desire and accepted the Torah sacrificially. It was a big sacrifice because we know that the Torah is full of restrictions and it really limits our possibility of having a good, enjoyable, easy life. So that was the question. Did the Jewish people basically have the philosophy of Bnei Esau and the philosophy of Bnei Yishmael? So the answer is no. The Goyim didn't find sale, they didn't find shade in the presence of the Almighty. They didn't. But the Jewish people found sale. It's not a contradiction. There's no sale for the Goyim because metaphorically they didn't find anything beneficial in the Torah. What the Jewish people saw, Ani yashafti v'chimadati. We made no sacrifice. It was a happy occasion. There was thunder and lightning and fire that was ablaze until the heart of heaven. There was darkness, and there was different types of darkness, opaque darkness, other types of darknesses. There was a total upheaval of natural law. Sinai itself shook. Mount Sinai was shaking, and nevertheless the Jewish people were happy. Kinesinasan Sinai, because they found that this is Olam Hazeh. This is the good life. This is the meaningful life. This is the purposeful life. This is a life of being close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is a life which connects us with our Maker. And we're going to be eternally connected to Him. Great things await us in this world, the world to come. Liyasid Lavai in the future. What great things await us. What a tremendous, tremendous opportunity we have through Kabbalah Satira. So this was the happiest occasion possible. That is why the Jewish people did not feel they made any sacrifice. Because if you're happy and you feel that this is the very purpose of life, this is going to bring you Olam Hazeh, this is going to bring you this worldly happiness. You don't need a world of senses. We can't weave, a halo of infinity around the finite goods of the senses. We can weave a halo of infinity around the infinite goods, also of the senses, but more pnimius, more internal feelings. And this was the happiest day of all time. And the limud that we have is that if we appreciate Torah, we appreciate mitzvahs, so we shall also be Zeichet Maamad Har Sinai. Because what exactly is Maamad Har Sinai? What produced it? What precipitated it? Dvarim Asmeichim Kinesinasa B'Sinai. We learn b'simcha how fortunate we are, what great opportunities we have. So we will also have a reenactment of Maamad Har Sinai with the entire event b'miluoi in its fullness. It was psychodramatic, and we'll also be zeichet to that. And even if we're not, we should try to fill our inner personality with dvarim that are kisimcha, that are like the simcha that our ancestors had at Har Sinai. Thank you very, very much for listening and viewing. Everybody should have a good yontif, and we should be zeicha for Kabbalah Satira Besimcha gedola. Thank you very much.